Story 1. The last shift-recorded testimony of Marcus Webb, night security guard, Chicago, Illinois. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm writing this from a friend's couch in Evanston, Illinois, because I can no longer go back to my apartment. Not after what happened at the Hargrove building. If you're reading this, please understand that what I'm about to describe is not a nightmare, not a hallucination, and not some cry for attention. Every word of it is true. I took the night security job at the Hargrove building 3 months ago. It was a commercial office tower in downtown Chicago, 42 floors of glass and steel, mostly law firms and financial consultants. The kind of place where everyone leaves by 7 and the cleaning crew clears out by 9. After that, it was just me, the cameras, and the silence. I liked it at first. The solitude felt peaceful. I had a small booth near the lobby entrance, a bank of monitors showing feeds from every floor, and a radio that mostly played static after midnight. My rounds were simple. Check the lobby, check the stairwells, ride the elevator to every 10th floor, log anything unusual. Nothing was ever unusual. That changed on a Tuesday in November. I came in for my shift at 10 p.m. The outgoing guard, a quiet guy named Pete, handed off the radio without saying much. But before he left, he paused at the door and said something I didn't think about until later. "Don't go to 38 tonight, Marcus. Maintenance issue." I nodded. He left. I didn't ask questions. The first few hours were normal. I made my rounds, logged my entries, drank bad coffee from the machine near the loading dock. By 1 in the morning, the building felt the way it always did, hollow and indifferent. Just steel and fluorescent light. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the camera feed for floor 38 went dark. Not static, not a flicker, just black. A clean, deliberate black, like someone had covered the lens with their hand. I called maintenance. No answer. I called the building manager's emergency line. Voicemail. I sat there for a few minutes, watching that black square on my monitor, and then I made the decision I will regret for the rest of my life. I took the elevator to 38. The doors opened to a long corridor, dimly lit, identical to every other floor except for one thing. At the far end of the hallway, a door was open. Suite 3812. I had walked this floor 100 times. That suite was always locked. It was listed in the building directory as vacant. I approached slowly. My hand was on my radio. The door wasn't just open, it had been pulled off its upper hinge and was leaning at an angle against the frame. Inside, the office was gutted. No furniture, no carpet, just raw concrete floors and bare walls. The drop ceiling tiles had been removed and stacked in a corner. Exposed ductwork hung overhead like metal ribs. In the center of the room was a chair, a single folding chair, facing the window. Someone was sitting in it. I froze in the doorway. The figure was still, completely still, and facing away from me. I could see the back of a head, dark hair, a gray jacket. My hand hovered over my radio. "Sir," I said, "this is building security. I need you to identify yourself." "Nothing, sir. I need you to stand up and face me." The figure didn't move. Not a twitch, not a breath. I stepped into the room. My footsteps echoed horribly on the bare concrete. I moved around to the side, keeping distance, trying to see the face. When I finally got a look, I stopped breathing. There was no face. The front of the head was smooth, featureless, like a mannequin. But this was not a mannequin. The hands resting on the knees had knuckles, veins, the precise texture of real skin. The shoes were worn, scuffed at the toe. The jacket had a coffee stain on the left lapel. It looked exactly like a person, except where the face should have been. My radio crackled. Then a voice came through, not from dispatch, not from anyone I recognized. Low, calm, almost conversational. "You weren't supposed to come up here, Marcus." I ran. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs all the way down, 38 flights, and I didn't stop until I was outside on the sidewalk, gasping in the November cold. I called 911. 2 officers came, walked the building, found nothing. Suite 3812 was locked. No sign of forced entry, no chair, no figure. They looked at me the way people look at someone they've already decided is wasting their time. I went back inside, finished my shift because I didn't know what else to do, and tried to tell myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, something rational. But when I reviewed the camera footage the next morning, the feed for floor 38 hadn't gone dark because of a technical issue. It had been manually disabled from inside the building's security system, from a terminal that, according to the access log, I had operated myself. At 1:47 a.m., I have no memory of touching that terminal. I quit the next day, packed a bag that night, and left my apartment. I haven't been back. The building manager called twice, left voicemails asking me to return my keycard. I haven't responded. 2 nights ago, someone slid a photograph under the door of where I'm staying. It was a picture of Suite 3812, taken from the doorway, showing the chair and the figure exactly as I had seen them. Written on the back in small, careful letters, "You already came back. Marcus, you just don't remember. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. And every night at 1:47, my phone lights up with a call from a number I don't recognize. I never answer, but I know one day I will." Story 2. The Tenant in 4B written account of Renata Osei, graduate student, New Orleans, Louisiana. My name is Renata Osei. I'm a second-year PhD student at Tulane University, or I was, until 7 weeks ago when I withdrew from my program and moved out of the Delacroix Arms apartments on Magazine Street. My advisor thinks I had a breakdown. My parents think I need medication. I'm writing this because I need at least one record to exist that says what actually happened. The Delacroix Arms was an old building, converted from a 19th century textile warehouse into 14 apartment units. I was on the 4th floor, Unit 4A. The layout was unusual. Each unit had thick brick walls, high ceilings, and windows that faced an interior courtyard. The building was quiet in a way that felt less like peace and more like holding its breath. I moved in August. By September, I noticed the tenant in 4B. I never saw them, not once, but I heard them constantly. Footsteps, mostly. Slow and deliberate, back and forth, like someone pacing a small room. They paced at night, usually starting around midnight and continuing until 4 or 5 in the morning. At first, I assumed it was insomnia, maybe anxiety, maybe someone working odd hours. I didn't complain. I wore earplugs. Then the noises changed. It started with the knocking, not at my door, on the shared wall between 4A and 4B. 3 slow knocks, always in the same pattern. Pause. 3 more, always at 3:14 inches the morning. I started waking up before it happened, like my body had memorized the schedule. I asked the building manager about the tenant in 4B. He stared at me for a long moment before saying, "That unit is unoccupied." When I told him I could hear footsteps and knocking every night, he said the building was old. That sound carried strangely through old brick, that it was probably someone on the 3rd floor. I checked the 3rd floor the next day. The unit directly below 4B, number 3B, had a padlock on the door and an orange notice from the city taped across it. Structural inspection, unoccupied pending assessment. That night, the knocking came again. 3:14. 3 slow knocks on the wall. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to control my breathing. Then something new happened. A voice, muffled but unmistakable, coming through the wall. "I know you can hear me." I sat up. I grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. I called the building manager's emergency number. I called twice. No answer. The voice came again, clearer this time, closer, as if it had moved to press itself against the brick. "You've been listening for weeks. It's rude not to respond." I left my apartment and slept in my car that night. The next morning I went back inside, and in the daylight I convinced myself I had imagined it. I was exhausted. I was deep in dissertation research, reading dense, disturbing texts about trauma and memory. I was alone in a city that still felt unfamiliar. My mind was manufacturing threats. I decided to try one thing. I knocked on the door of 4B. No answer. I pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. I tried the handle, not expecting anything. The door swung open. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no personal items, nothing. Just bare walls and a floor with a fine layer of dust. The kind of undisturbed dust that accumulates over months. No footprints in the dust. No sign that anyone had been inside recently, except for one thing. On the wall directly adjacent to my apartment, at roughly the height where someone's mouth might be if they were standing and speaking through the brick, someone had drawn a rectangle in thick black marker. It was approximately the size and shape of a door, and in the center of the rectangle, at handle height, someone had drawn a small circle, a door, with a handle, drawn on a solid brick wall, as if they were trying to make one. Beneath it, written in the same black marker in small capital letters, "I have been waiting for someone to answer." I photographed it, left immediately, and reported it to the building manager. He came up, looked at the drawing, and told me the unit had been empty since March. He seemed more confused than alarmed. He said he would repaint the wall. That night, I woke up at 3:14. The knocking had changed. It wasn't coming from the wall anymore. It was coming from inside my closet. I did not open the closet. I grabbed my keys, my laptop, and my coat, and I left the building. I called the university housing office the next morning and began the process of breaking my lease. I've been staying with my cousin in Metairie. Things were quiet for 2 weeks. Then, last Thursday, I opened my laptop to work on a chapter draft and found a new document in my files. It hadn't been there before. It was titled Notes.txt, and it contained only one line. "You still haven't answered, Renata. The door is still there." I checked the document properties. It had been created at 3:14 a.m. on Wednesday night. I had been asleep. My laptop had been closed. I haven't opened it since. I don't know what's in 4B. I don't know who or what was making those sounds. But I know that somewhere, in an empty apartment in an old building on Magazine Street, there is a door drawn on a brick wall, and something on the other side of it is still waiting for someone to knock back. Story 3. Mile Marker 214. Submitted by Thomas Harker, long-haul truck driver somewhere in Nevada. My name is Thomas Harker. I've been driving long-haul routes for 11 years. I've covered every major interstate in the continental United States. I've driven through blizzards in Wyoming, floods in Louisiana, dust storms in West Texas. I'm not someone who gets rattled. I say that not to impress anyone, but because I need you to understand what kind of person is telling you this story. I am not imaginative. I am not prone to fear. And what I experienced on Route 93 inches Nevada 6 weeks ago was real. I was on a standard run. Pickup in Salt Lake City. Delivery to a distribution center outside Las Vegas. Route 93 through Nevada is a long, straight, 2-lane road that cuts through the high desert. It's the kind of road that punishes inattention. No towns for miles. No cell service for long stretches, just black asphalt and scrub brush and the occasional coyote at the edge of your headlights. I was making good time. It was just past 2 in the morning when I passed mile marker 214. Something was standing on the side of the road. I want to be precise because precision matters. It was not an animal. It was not a person, or at least not a normal one. It was tall, much taller than a man, and thin in a way that suggested something was wrong with its proportions. It stood perfectly still at the edge of my headlights, and what I saw of its face only for a second as I passed was wrong, not deformed, wrong. like looking at a reflection that doesn't quite match. I kept driving. I told myself it was a trick of the light, fatigue, a Joshua tree casting an unusual shadow. I checked my mirrors. Nothing in the road behind me. I kept going. 4 miles later, at marker 218, my engine died. Not a gradual failure, not a warning light. One moment the truck was running, the next it simply stopped. I coasted to the shoulder and sat there in the sudden silence with my hazards blinking. I tried the ignition multiple times. Nothing. I picked up my radio to call dispatch and got only static. I tried my cell phone. No signal. I sat with the hazards on and thought through my options. It was cold outside, maybe 40 degrees, and the nearest town was at least 30 miles in either direction. I had water and a blanket. The protocol was to stay with the vehicle and wait for another driver to pass and call it in. I waited. No cars came, not in either direction, which on Route 93 at 2 in the morning was not unusual, but it felt wrong that night, too quiet. Even the wind had stopped. At some point, I heard footsteps on the gravel shoulder behind my truck, slow, measured, getting closer. I watched my side mirror. In the amber glow of the hazard lights, I could see the gravel shoulder stretching back into darkness. Nothing there, but the footsteps continued. I could hear them clearly now, just outside my door, moving along the passenger side of the cab. Then they stopped. The passenger window was dark. I couldn't see anything, but something was there. I could feel it the way you feel someone standing too close to you in a crowd, that pressure of proximity. My radio crackled. Through the static, a voice. Low, almost pleasant. You saw me at 2:14. It was not a question. I did not respond. I did not move. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to be completely still. Most people don't stop looking after they pass. You kept watching your mirrors. That means you're curious. Curious people are interesting. The hazard lights continued their slow blinking. Orange, dark, orange, dark. You don't have to be afraid. I've been standing at 2:14 for a long time. It's been a while since someone noticed. I reached very slowly for my door lock and engaged it. Both doors. My hands were ice cold. That won't help, the voice said, almost gently. But it's reasonable. You're being sensible. Then silence. 30 seconds, a minute. I kept watching the mirror. Nothing. My engine turned over on its own. No key in the ignition. No one touching anything. The engine simply started. The dashboard lit up, and every system came back online, as if nothing had ever failed. My radio resolved from static to my dispatch channel mid-sentence, my dispatcher asking for a check-in. I pulled back onto the road and drove without stopping until I reached a gas station outside Alamo. I sat in the parking lot until sunrise. When I called dispatch to explain my delay, I said I had a minor mechanical issue. I didn't know how to explain anything else. I completed the delivery, and then I told my company I needed 2 weeks off, medical leave. They didn't push back. I've looked up mile marker 214 on Route 93. There's nothing notable about it. No accident history, no landmarks, nothing in any database. I've talked to 2 other drivers who run that corridor regularly. One of them went quiet when I mentioned the mile marker and then changed the subject. The other one said, very carefully, that he always skips his break until he's past mile 220. He didn't explain why. He didn't have to. I'm taking a different route from now on. I won't be driving Route 93 again, and I've stopped looking in my mirrors for longer than necessary. Because once, just once, after a night run through the Nevada desert, I checked my mirror at a red light in downtown Las Vegas and saw something in the back of my empty trailer. It was tall, and it was thin, and it was watching me from the dark. And the worst part was that it seemed pleased I had finally looked. Story 4. The Frequency Account of Priya Nair, Radio Engineer, Portland, Oregon. My name is Priya Nair. I'm a broadcast engineer by training, currently unemployed. Currently living out of a storage unit in southeast Portland because I had to leave my apartment, and I can't explain the full reason to any landlord without sounding like someone they shouldn't rent to. I've never had a psychiatric diagnosis. I've never used drugs. I have a degree in electrical engineering from Oregon State and 12 years of professional experience working with radio transmission equipment. I understand how signals work. I understand frequency, interference, modulation. I am telling you this because what I'm about to describe sounds like the kind of thing a person says when they don't understand those things, and I need you to know the opposite is true. 6 months ago, I was working for a mid-sized regional broadcaster in Portland. My job involved managing transmission equipment, monitoring signal quality, and troubleshooting interference issues. Most of it was routine. Then in March, we started receiving complaints about a recurring interference pattern on one of our AM frequencies, 1,240 kilohertzes. The interference was unusual. Most interference has recognizable characteristics: power line, hum, intermodulation from nearby transmitters, atmospheric ducting. This was different. It came in irregular bursts, lasting between 3 and 40 seconds. Always during the overnight hours between 2 and 4 a.m. And it had a structure. Not music, not voice, not data in any format I could identify, but structured, deliberate. Like a code or a language that operated on a logic I couldn't quite follow. I started recording it. Over 3 weeks, I accumulated about 14 hours of the interference in isolated clips. I ran every analysis I knew: spectral analysis, waveform comparison, pattern recognition software. The signal was unlike anything in any database I had access to. My colleague, an older engineer named Ray, listened to one of the recordings and told me I was wasting my time on ghost signals. He said the pattern was probably just 2 separate interference sources overlapping in a way that created the illusion of structure. He was probably right. He usually was. But I kept recording. The 4th week, something changed. The interference started including a recognizable element. Buried in the structure, repeating at irregular intervals, was my name, not in voice, not in Morse code, in a modulation pattern that, when converted to a spectrogram and read visually, spelled out the letters of my name in a format that should not have been interpretable by human senses without the analytical tools I was using. Which means that whoever or whatever was generating this signal knew that I had those tools, knew that I was analyzing the recordings, knew that I would see it, I told Ray. He told me I was projecting patterns onto noise, that the human brain is wired to find familiar shapes in random data, that I was working too many overnight shifts. He wasn't being unkind. He was probably still right. That night, alone in the transmission room at 2 in the morning, the interference came through on 1,240, and I recorded it as usual. Then, for the first time, something came through on the monitoring speaker in clear, unambiguous audio, not the structured interference. A voice, quiet, unhurried, as if it had all the time in the world. You've been listening very carefully, Priya. Most people can't hear us at all. Most equipment can't resolve us. But yours does, and you do, and that's why we've been speaking to you specifically. I checked every system. No external audio input was active. The monitoring chain was clean. There was no pathway through which a human voice could have entered that speaker that night. We're not going to harm you, the voice continued. We want you to understand that this is not a malfunction, and it is not your imagination. There is a frequency between your frequencies, a space in the electromagnetic spectrum that your equipment can almost reach. We exist in that space. We have been here for a very long time. We speak when we can, and mostly no one hears us. You hear us. That makes you unusual. I sat perfectly still. My recording equipment was running. I asked, very quietly, "What do you want?" A pause. Then, "We don't want anything from you. We simply wanted you to know we're here. We've been trying to tell someone for a long time." It gets lonely, I suppose is the word, in the space between. Then the interference ended and the frequency was clean. I have the recording. I've listened to it hundreds of times. The voice is real. It is not explainable by any mechanism I understand. I submitted a technical report to my supervisor describing anomalous interference and left out everything else. 2 days later, I was called into a meeting with management and HR and told that my position was being eliminated due to budget restructuring. I was walked out the same day. A week after that, my apartment building had a fire in the electrical room. Nothing serious, no injuries, but the damage to the wiring in my unit was extensive enough that I was asked to vacate while repairs were made. The repairs have been ongoing for 3 months with no projected completion date. I don't know if any of this is connected. Maybe none of it is. Maybe I lost my job because of budget cuts and my apartment because of bad wiring, and the voice was an anomaly I can't explain, and that's all. But I still have the recordings. And some nights, when I hook up my old monitoring equipment in the storage unit and tune to 1,240 kilohertzes between 2 and 4 in the morning, the interference is still there. The structure, the patterns. And once, 3 weeks ago, it spelled out something new. Not my name this time, just 2 words. We remember. I turned off the equipment. I haven't turned it back on since. But I think about the voice, about what it said, about the space between frequencies, about how long something might wait in the dark between stations, just for the chance that someone might be listening. I think the worst part isn't that something is out there in the frequencies that no one else can hear. The worst part is that it said it was lonely, and some nights I think I understand exactly what it means. Story 5. What Came Back from Crater Lake. Final journal entries of Neil Cassidy, wilderness photographer, Klamath County, Oregon. I found this journal in a waterproof case left in the parking lot of the Crater Lake Lodge. There was a note attached to it that said, "If you read this, please share it. I need someone to know what happened to me here. I've transcribed it in full. I don't know who Neil Cassidy is. I've searched his name online and found no results." The journal's entries begin in early September. Anonymous. Typed and distributed September 4 th. Arrived at Crater Lake National Park this morning. The drive from Portland took about 5 hours. I'm here for 2 weeks on a photography project. Long exposure, night shots of the lake, focusing on astronomical reflection. The water here is the clearest in the world, deep blue, almost unreal. On a still night, the stars reflect perfectly. I've been planning this trip for 18 months. Set up camp at Lost Creek Campground. Met the camp host, a retired postal worker named Gus. Friendly. Told me the fall crowds are done, and I'd mostly have the rim road to myself. Good. I prefer working alone. First night, clear skies, excellent shots. Lake looked like a mirror. Stayed out until 3 a.m. Slept well. September 7 th. Third night at the lake. Something odd tonight. Was shooting from Rim Village, facing north, when I noticed something on the water. The lake is extremely deep, just under 2,000 feet at its deepest, and the water is so clear that on calm nights the bottom is almost visible in the shallows near shore. But this wasn't near shore. There was a shape moving below the surface in the middle of the lake. Not a fish. Too large. Not a boat. There are no motorized vessels allowed on the lake. Just a shape. Pale. Elongated. About 40 feet below the surface based on how it interacted with the light. Moving slowly in a wide circle. I photographed it. In the stills, it appears as a pale blur. Could be an optical illusion. The light on this lake does strange things. September 9 th. The shape was there again last night. Larger, I think, or closer to the surface. Moving in the same wide circle. I set up my longest lens and shot continuous frames for about 20 minutes. When I reviewed the images this morning, most of them were blank, overexposed to pure white, as if something had emitted light directly into the sensor. But 3 frames were intact. In 2 of them, the shape is visible. In the third, the last frame before the overexposure began, the shape is near the surface, and you can see what I initially thought was a reflection of the night sky. It isn't. I've zoomed in on the image until the pixels start to dissolve. The pale shape near the surface is not a reflection. It is facing upward, and where the face should be, looking up through 2,000 feet of cold black water at the underside of the stars, there is something that I cannot describe in terms that don't sound like the raving of someone who has lost their mind. I'm going to try anyway. It looked like it was looking for something. Like something that has been down there for a very long time, circling in the dark, waiting. September 11th. I haven't slept since the 9th. Every time I close my eyes, I see the image from that last frame. I spoke with Gus this morning. Asked him if there were any legends about the lake. Any local folklore. He smiled and said the Klamath people, who have lived around this area for thousands of years, have always considered the lake sacred and never fished from its waters. They considered it a gateway. When I asked him a gateway to what, he stopped smiling. A gateway between what's above and what's below, he said. Some things are supposed to stay separated. The lake keeps them that way. He didn't say anything else. I didn't push. September 12th. Last night, I went to the rim at midnight. I wasn't planning to. I woke up at 11:47, and I simply got up, got dressed, got in my car, and drove to the rim. I don't remember deciding to do any of those things. I remember waking up, and then I remember standing at the rim in the dark with no memory of the intervening time. The lake was completely still, perfectly flat, the stars above and their reflections below indistinguishable from each other. The shape was at the surface. I couldn't see detail. Just the pale mass, enormous now, much larger than I had understood from the previous nights. It extended across a significant portion of the lake's width, circular, motionless, like a coin seen from above or an eye seen from the side. I raised my camera. The shape turned. I don't mean it moved. I mean it turned, like a head turning, reorienting itself, pivoting on some internal axis so that whatever was at its center was now directed upward. Upward and at me specifically, as if in all that darkness and distance it knew exactly where I was standing. I lowered the camera. Nothing happened. The lake was still. The shape was still. We stayed like that for what felt like a very long time. Then I heard my own voice, coming from somewhere behind me, saying, in a tone I did not recognize as mine, "I see it. I see the way through." I spun around. No one was there. The rim road was empty. My car was parked 50 yards behind me, exactly where I had left it, but my shadow on the ground was facing the wrong direction. I walked back to my car without running, because I understood somehow that running would be wrong, would invite something I didn't want to invite. I drove back to camp. I sat in my tent until morning. September 13. This may be the last entry I'm leaving today. But I need to record one more thing first. This morning I went to the camp restroom to wash up, and when I looked in the mirror, the reflection was delayed. Not by much, a fraction of a second. When I raised my right hand, the reflection raised its right hand slightly after. I stood there for a long time testing it, raising my hand, lowering it, turning my head. Always that fraction of a second delay, as if the reflection were watching what I did and then deciding to copy it, as if it were learning me rather than being me. I left the restroom and came back to my tent, and I am writing this down because I need it to exist somewhere outside my own memory, which I am no longer sure I can trust completely. There is something in Crater Lake that has been down there since before anyone had words for what it was, and I think looking at it directly for as long as I did, through a camera lens in the dark, I think I let some part of it look back. Through the lens, and through my eye, and through whatever gap exists between the world outside a person and the world inside, I'm leaving the lake and the journal in the parking lot. I'm going somewhere with no water. No reflective surfaces if I can help it. If you're reading this, don't go to the rim at night. Don't photograph the water after midnight. And whatever you do, don't look at your reflection until you're very far away from here. I don't know if the delay will get better or worse, but this morning, for just a moment, the reflection smiled before I did. N. Cassidy, September 13th,